Welcome to Holy Smoke. I'm your host. Each week, we pull one contradiction from the most scrutinized book in human history, hold it up to the light, and let you decide what to do with what you see. What if the greatest story ever told was already told 1400 years earlier? Before we begin, for more information about this episode, a meme, and the collection plate, you can find it all at the website, which is holysmoke.wtf. Now, let's get into it. Today, we're looking at Jesus' earliest moments on earth. Matthew 2, verse 16 says, "Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men." Now, when we turn over to Luke chapter 2, verse 22, it says, "And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord." In Matthew, Jesus is being persecuted by King Herod for merely existing. Luke makes no mention whatsoever about Jesus being threatened as an infant. If you are today years old learning about this, welcome to the Holy Smoke Bible. Most of us that have read these passages might easily think potato, potato, when Luke and Matthew do not agree with each other on whether or not Herod persecuted baby Jesus. When I was a believer, I never questioned it. It was as if the Gospels were a tetralogy. It's as if the Gospels were a tetralogy, 4 books meant to be read together. Week after week, I saw how my church pastor would literally stitch different verses of the Bible together to make various points for a sermon. The thing is, Herod's persecution of baby Jesus is not a small detail to leave out of the Gospels because it carries life or death stakes. If Herod succeeds, baby Jesus is no more. If Herod fails, baby Jesus lives. Whether it's church leaders, pastors, or priests, they often mix and match the story of Jesus as if the 4 Gospels are telling the same story from different points of view. However, these 4 authors are laying down biblical truth that is meant to stand the test of time for millennia, and they have 4 different versions of the same story. Matthew 2:16 makes it clear that Herod sees baby Jesus as a threat to his power. When he hears from the 3 wise men that baby Jesus has been born, Herod literally sends out his henchmen to kill toddlers across Bethlehem. Herod wasn't someone with just an idea that this new baby was inconvenient. He was a king who had means, motives, and opportunity to kill at scale that makes or breaks whether or not an infant Jesus would be able to survive the cradle. For the other Gospels to not mention this life or death implication of the newborn king is epic level miscommunication because it's a critical detail that should not have been omitted when it defines whether or not a baby Jesus grows up to become the savior of the world. It of course begs the question, Why does Matthew depart so much from the Gospels in ways that seem unprecedented? We're now going to play a game called Borrow a Miracle, where you'll learn how to spot a borrowed miracle. I suspect Matthew was having a case of writer's block. He was flipping through the Old Testament, looking for a juicy story that would be unforgettable, when he came across the story of Moses. And once you see the parallels between the story of Jesus and Moses, they look like they share the same spine. With Moses, Pharaoh orders every Hebrew boy to be drowned. With Jesus, Herod orders every Bethlehem boy under 2 to be killed. With Moses, he flees with the king who seeks his life. With Jesus, Joseph flees to Egypt because Herod is after baby Jesus. With Moses, the instructions were to return to Egypt. With Jesus, it's to go to Israel. With Moses, he was called my son out of Egypt. With Jesus, the same words were reapplied to him. Matthew 2, verse 20 is almost identical from Exodus 4, verse 19. Same sentence, 2 different infants, 1,400 years apart. The greatest story ever told was already told, and all you needed to do was reread the old story to see it bleeding through the new one. When you start to stack all the different contradictions about how baby Jesus came to be, the Gospels start to look like jigsaw puzzle pieces that don't quite fit. It's fun to imagine what the nativity story would look like if it were in the style of a disclaimer that follows a prescription medication. With that, I'd like to introduce you to a new prescription called Nativity.
Nativity, Matthew's formula, is a fast-acting belief supplement prescribed every December. Common side effects may include certainty, goosebumps, a warm feeling you cannot source, and the ability to picture wise men and shepherds at the same manger, though the two groups have never once appeared in the same gospel. Nativity is now available in 4 conflicting editions. Keep out of reach of fact-checkers. In studies, one of 4 gospels reported a royal massacre. 2 skipped the birth entirely. The 4th walked the family into the killer's own city for a relaxing temple visit. Results were not reproducible. Your pastor may blend all 4 doses into one for easier swallowing. By continuing to believe, you accept terms of service you never read, including the clause where a baby is hunted by a king no historian can locate. If questioning persists beyond 3 verses, that is the product working, and your intuition and intelligence coming back online. Nativity may cause you to wonder whether you are making a fuss over nothing, or whether Matthew committed plagiarism with a few tweaks. Both reactions are common. Active ingredients sourced from Exodus 4. No credit given. Do not take Nativity with critical thinking. Do not operate a concordance while believing. Nativity has not been evaluated by Josephus, who logged every other cruelty Herod ever committed and left this one off the label. This verse has not tested on Romans. Ask your pastor if Nativity is right for you. Individual salvation may vary. Discontinue use if you notice the same plot in an older book.
Let's now shift our attention to the 3 Gentiles who were the first to acknowledge the existence of the Messiah, the 3 wise men. The Magi are described in Matthew from verses 1 through 12. It's the only biblical account of their visit to the newborn Jesus. Magi is a word we don't hear very often. This is a time where we're going to go look at the Greek language to understand the definition of the word magi. In Greek, magi means a sorcerer, a magician, a wizard. What in the sorcery is magi doing inside of Matthew? It looks like the wise men might also be known unofficially as the Wizards of Bethlehem Place. Beyond using the word magi, Matthew takes a few more artistic liberties. When the wise men turn out to be sorcerers, and king is a promotion the text never gives, Matthew hands them no crowns. The concept of three itself is a conclusion borrowed from the assumption that three gifts is equal to three different people. Matthew never explicitly defines how many magi were present. When you look at the Greek for the definition of the word magi, you see how magical beings in the form of sorcerers, magicians, and wizards were being brought in to welcome the Messiah. Now let's pivot to the three gifts the wise men were said to have brought to baby Jesus. It feels like a baby shower gift fail. The three wise men brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What's an infant to do with gold? Commission a blinged out baby bottle? Start a savings fund? Or perhaps set aside money to fund a future carpentry business? Then there's the frankincense. Frankincense is the original holy smoke. For the temples in Jerusalem would run on incense to keep prayers moving from earth to heaven. But why would God in human form need a vessel for prayers to go up? The historians will say it's a VIP gift for a newborn king, given how hard it was to come by. And then there was the third gift. It is predictive as much as it is disturbing to give to a baby. Myrrh is an embalming spice. Yes, that kind of embalming, the kind that's used to preserve bodies after death. One of the wizards looked at all the possible choices and thought myrrh was an appropriate gift for a baby, which in essence is a funeral supply. The three wise men winded up looking like three stooges who have never been to a baby shower. They apparently missed the memo to bring things the family would actually need to care for a newborn. If we rewind the story just a little bit, we see that the three wise men found the newfound king by following a star. It looks so pretty across greeting cards, a north star setting the path midst the darkness of the night. A shining, guiding light bringing them towards this newfound king. It makes for a beautiful story with beautiful visuals. But following a light in the form of a star is actually a curious detail. You see, the three wise men were said to be following a star. That's basically astrology. Now the horoscope spins. Picture the magi opening the morning paper to the astrology column the Bible accidentally endorses. Deuteronomy lists celestial divination among the forbidden things. And then Matthew has foreign star readers arrive as the first Gentiles to recognize the Messiah. The prophets condemn the mechanism that delivers the worship. The people who should be furthest outside read the sky correctly, while Herod, sitting on scripture and scribes, has to ask the wise men, what's happening? The final cherry on top for the episode is this. By the church's own calendar, Jesus was most likely born several years before Christ. The firmest time anchor of his birthday is the mention of Herod. Both Matthew and Luke said Jesus' birth around the reign of Herod the Great. and Herod died in 4 BCE. For the gospel events to fit, Jesus had to be born by 4 BCE, probably a year or two before that. Luke is the other anchor. The census around Quirinius points to 6 CE instead, which is the same contradiction we already hit. Most historians will side with the Herod date. December 25th is just as soft. The day was selected sometime in the 300s CE with no historical record behind it. Off by days and years, Jesus' birthday is never quite right versus when it happened versus when it's celebrated. Today, you have seen firsthand how Matthew lays out the story of Herod persecuting baby Jesus. Luke does not mention Herod's persecution of baby Jesus at all. You don't need a pastor, priest, or church leader to point this out to you. You can see it for yourself when you compare Matthew 2, verse 16, and Luke chapter 2, verse 22. You have to wonder why the church never addresses this directly from the pulpit, around why the Gospels don't agree with each other at critical moments in the early life of Jesus. When you examine the doctrine, the dogma, the denomination, and the divine word, you find the fingerprints of humanity on divinity. A butterfly cannot return to the cocoon. Once you know what was hidden from you, there's no returning to faith with good conscience. The world needs people honest enough to name the doubt, helpful enough to choose works without faith, and humane enough to see what faith costs the very people it claims to love. The truth will set you free. If today's episode made you think, head on over to holysmoke.wtf/blog for the meme and show notes for this episode. New episodes are dropped every Sunday. Subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss one. For early access and everything Holy Smoke, join the newsletter at holysmoke.wtf. As always, may you be honest, may you be humane, may you be whole. See you next Sunday.